By the time Juno Hale left the planning office, the rain had already turned the city into a blur of smeared brake lights and silver runoff. Water sheeted over the bus shelter roof in a steady drumming rush, loud enough to drown out traffic for half a second at a time. She stood under it with her canvas work bag hugged to her side and her apartment keys pinched between two cold fingers, studying the flooded curb cut at the corner the way other people stared at weather. The storm drain there had been clogged for weeks. She had filed the notice herself, attached photos, copied the district office, and still the water rose in a brown, swirling bowl where pedestrians had to either jump or soak their shoes. Predictable failure point, she thought, because she had spent all day thinking in those terms. Her phone buzzed with another email from a consultant who had ignored a setback requirement for the third revision in a row. Juno glanced at it, locked the screen without answering, and stepped into the rain when the bus rolled past too full to stop. Fine. 40 minutes on foot. Better than standing still and getting colder. The city pressed close around her in wet brick, dark glass, steam rising from grates, the smell of gasoline and damp concrete mixing into something metallic at the back of her throat. Her flats soaked through in the first block. By the third, rain had slicked her hair against her neck and sent a chill through the collar of her jacket. She kept moving anyway, shoulders tucked, bag protected under one arm. Her neighborhood sat just far enough from downtown to feel forgotten. Streetlights flickered over chain-link fences and narrow apartment fronts. The corner grocery was still open, its windows fogged from the warmth inside. Juno went in for soup, batteries, and the cat food she had forgotten that morning. The fluorescent lights hummed. A child cried near the register. Someone tracked mud between aisles 3 and 4. She moved through the store with the same quiet efficiency she used everywhere else, taking stock automatically, low shelves on canned goods, produce turnover poor, freezer gasket failing on the left side. If the power cut out tonight, this place would lose half its stock by morning. You look drowned, the cashier said when she came up with her basket. Only mostly, Juno said. He smiled because that was the expected response. She paid, tucked the receipt into her pocket, and headed back into the rain with a plastic bag swinging from one wrist. Her building smelled like old plaster and overheated pipes. The stairwell light on the second landing was out again. She climbed by memory, one hand on the rail, counting doors in the dimness. Inside her apartment, warmth didn't greet her so much as stale stillness. One room, narrow galley kitchen, radiator with opinions but inconsistent output. The ceiling stain over the window had spread another inch since Sunday. Min, she called, dropping her keys in the chipped ceramic bowl by the door. A gray cat slid out from under the table, tail high, and wound around her ankles in immediate accusation. Juno laughed despite herself, wet and tired and feeling older than 28. She set down the groceries, peeled off her jacket, then crouched to scratch the cat under the chin until the purring began. Routine steadied everything. Dry the counter. Fill the kettle. Feed the cat. Plug in her phone. Check the window latch. She changed into sweatpants and an old university t-shirt, wrung rainwater from her hair over the sink, and stood for a moment with both palms braced against the laminate while the kettle hissed toward a boil behind her. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, low and prolonged. The lights in her kitchen dimmed, recovered, then dimmed again hard enough to make the microwave clock blink out and return as nonsense. Min froze mid-chew, ears flattening. Don't, Juno muttered to the apartment, to the grid, to the whole fragile arrangement. The third flicker didn't recover. Darkness dropped clean and total, followed by the ticking quiet of everything electric gone dead. Rain battered the window. Somewhere downstairs, a man shouted in irritation. Juno swore under her breath and felt blindly for the drawer where she kept the flashlight and spare batteries, her shin knocking the table on the way. Her fingers found the flashlight, then something that was not there before, a smooth warm surface embedded flush against the wood, like glass set into the drawer itself. The dark around her changed. Not brightened, changed, as if a pale blue outline had been drawn under her skin and laid across the kitchen in thin, geometric lines. They spread over cabinet edges, traced the floor seams, climbed the walls in a silent lattice. Min let out a low, strangled growl. In the center of the room, above the cracked vinyl tiles and the groceries she hadn't put away, a rectangle of light unfolded itself in the air, and words began to write their way into being. The letters burned into the air one after another, clean and merciless. Initialize shelter core? Y/N. Juno stared at them, one hand braced on the counter, the other wrapped around the flashlight so tightly her knuckles hurt. The rectangle hovered at chest height, translucent enough that she could still see the ruined kitchen through it, sink full of stale dishes, one chair on its side, a hairline crack in the window over the table. Outside that window there was no neighboring building, no alley light, no wet city glow. Only a dim gray vastness and the silhouettes of trees far too close. Min's growl deepened. The gray tabby had flattened himself under the table, fur puffed, eyes fixed on the window. "I know," she whispered, though she had no idea what she was agreeing with. Her first stupid thought was that she was dreaming. Her second was that if she touched the wrong thing, something would come through the walls. The smooth panel in the drawer warmed under her fingertips. It had no seam, no wire, no place it could have come from. Embedded in the cheap wood as if the drawer had been built around it. She swallowed, then pressed her thumb against the glowing Y. The rectangle widened. Blue lines flashed through the floor. Every cabinet rattled at once. Juno lurched back. A tone vibrated through the apartment, not loud but deep enough to buzz in her teeth. Shelter core established. Boundary unstable. Available mass insufficient. Select anchor object. Below the message, pale outlines sprang over the kitchen, table, refrigerator, stove, counters, water heater closet. Each object glimmered with a faint number she somehow understood as structural weight. Anchor object. A hard crack split the room. The window over the table starred white at the center. Min hissed. Cold hit next, sharp and immediate, as if the glass had opened a mouth. Juno moved without thinking. She grabbed the chair from the floor and jammed it under the table, then dropped to her knees and dragged Min out by sheer handfuls of angry fur and squirming muscle. He raked her wrist and bolted for the hall. Another crack snapped from the window. This one louder. Her apartment, or whatever this place was now, was failing. Boundary unstable. Available mass insufficient. Anchor object. The narrow city unit had swollen around her in impossible silence. Beyond the kitchen threshold sat not the cramped main room she had rented, but a sagging front room leading to a porch and a shallow crawlspace under rotten boards, as if the system had skinned her apartment in the bones of an older house. She looked at the refrigerator first. Heavy. Central. Full of food, maybe. But it stood against the outer wall, right beside the failing window. Bad placement. The stove was bolted and dead. The table sat near the middle of the room, thick old wood, ugly but solid. She had hated it when she rented the place. Too bulky for the space, impossible to move alone. Which meant it could hold. Juno slapped the table outline in the air. Anchor confirmed. Core mass, adequate. Begin reinforcement? Cost, 20 caloric units /3L water /8-minute focus. She actually laughed once, a clipped, unbelieving sound. Calories? The crack in the window spread another inch. 8 minutes. 3 liters. 20 calories. That was absurdly specific, and somehow more terrifying for it. She yanked open the fridge. The interior light was dead, but the flashlight beam found half a carton of eggs, take-out containers, wilted spinach, mustard, a 6-pack of seltzer, and 2-gallon jugs of water she'd filled after the city advisory last week. Real water. Thank God. She set one jug on the table, then the other. Her hands shook as she dug out cold rice and a heel of bread. 20 calories was nothing. A bite. A system that charged food and water like fuel. The window gave with a brittle pop. A coin-sized hole appeared in the center, and wind screamed through it, carrying a smell like wet stone and rotting leaves. Not city air. Forest air. Old air. Min yowled from the hallway. "Come here," she said, voice rough. "Come on, Min." He did not come. Juno bit the bread, forced herself to chew, then took a swallow from one jug and poured the rest into a stockpot, then another into a mixing bowl, then every bottle, cup, and pitcher she could reach except the cracked half-liter bottle by the sink. Measured enough? No idea. Close enough had to be enough. She put both hands flat on the table. Begin reinforcement? Y/N. Yes. The answer tore out of her. Cold ripped through her palms, then heat, then a draining weakness so sudden her knees nearly buckled. Blue lines surged up the table legs and spread across the floor in a tight square around the kitchen. The old wood darkened, grain tightening, corners sharpening as if invisible tools were planing it smooth at impossible speed. Water in the bowl shivered and sank by visible increments. The jug in her left hand softened, collapsing inward as the liquid inside vanished. Juno clenched her jaw and kept her hands in place. Outside, something large moved past the broken window, blotting out the gray for one silent, monstrous second. The shadow slid away from the broken window and the whole house seemed to hold its breath with her. Then claws hit the porch. Not the light skitter of a scavenger. Wait. Deliberate. Boards complained under it in slow creaks that moved from one end of the porch to the other, testing. Juno tore her hands off the table and staggered back, arms trembling so hard she nearly lost her footing. The blue lines in the floor faded, but the kitchen remained changed, straighter, denser, less rotten somehow, as if the room had been reminded what a room was supposed to be. A wet snuffling sound came through the broken glass. Juno snatched the hatchet from beside the stove and forced herself to breathe through the weakness hollowing out her muscles. Water. The reinforcement had taken water. A lot of it. Her mouth felt papery already, and the cracked bottle on the counter was all she had left within reach. The snuffling stopped. A black muzzle eased through the shattered window frame, followed by an eye the color of old amber. Too high off the ground. Too large. The creature pushed harder, jagged glass ticking against hide that looked more like bark-soaked fur than skin. Its nostrils flared, drinking in the scent of her, the water, the fresh-cut wood, the impossible change in the room. Juno backed toward the pantry door and saw, with a spike of sudden thought, the sack of dried beans she had wedged there earlier to keep the warped frame shut. It lunged. She moved on instinct. Not back, sideways. The muzzle slammed into the reinforced table instead of her. The table screeched over the floor but did not splinter. The beast snarled, recoiling, and Juno brought the hatchet down with both hands. The blade bit into the bridge of its nose and stuck shallowly. Hot, black-red blood sprayed her wrist. The creature screamed. Not a wolf. Not any dog she had ever heard. A deeper, tearing sound, furious and shocked. It thrashed, wrenching free, and half its head came through the window with the next shove. Shoulders followed, forcing the frame apart. Juno kicked the pantry door open. The bean sack, a coil of wire, and a stack of warped shelves toppled outward in a clattering avalanche. Not enough to hurt it. Enough to buy a heartbeat. She grabbed the wire, looped it around the loose neck of an iron pot, and hurled the pot toward the far wall. It crashed in the front room. The creature snapped toward the noise. Predatory focus, immediate and total. Good. Juno dove for the back of the kitchen, seized the water bowl from the floor, and flung it across the threshold into the front room. The splash hit old dust and rotted boards with a dark slap. The scent changed. Fresh. Sharp. Alive. The beast surged after it. It crossed the kitchen square. Blue fire flashed under its paws. The reinforced floor held. The front room did not. With a crack like a gunshot, the rotten boards beyond the kitchen threshold gave way. One foreleg punched through, then the other. The animal's chest slammed the edge. It howled and twisted, jaws snapping at empty air as the rest of its weight dragged it downward into the shallow crawlspace beneath the house. Juno did not hesitate. She grabbed the wood-chopping maul from the splintered wood box by the cold hearth, stumbled forward, and drove the blunt end down at its skull. Once. Twice. The third strike glanced off Bone and Jared, both her shoulders so badly stars burst across her vision. The beast lashed upward, a claw ripping through her pant leg and scoring fire across her calf. She screamed and fell against the counter. The animal fought harder, wedging itself up on raw strength. One forepaw found the reinforced edge and held. Then a smaller shape streaked through the broken window. Juno flinched, expecting a second attacker, but it was a lean, mud-slick thing no bigger than a fox, with oversized translucent ears, striped gray fur plastered to a ribby frame, and a split tail streaming behind it. It landed on the trapped beast's back with a shrill, savage bark and sank needle teeth into its exposed ear. The larger creature convulsed. Its grip slipped. Juno lunged on pain-shaking legs and slammed the maul down across the paw still hooked on the floor. Bone cracked. The beast dropped fully into the dark below, hitting with a meaty thud that shook dust from the rafters. Its snarls turned muffled, then distant, then were answered by something farther under the house that made Juno's skin crawl worse than the first sound had. The little striped animal sprang away from the hole and bared its teeth at her too, wild-eyed, shaking, ready to die before being cornered again. Juno stood bent over the maul, blood running warm into her boot, chest heaving. "I know," she whispered, though she didn't know if she meant the pain, the fear, or the choice to let one more dangerous thing stay inside. From beyond the porch came the unmistakable click of a rifle being cocked. The sound came from the porch steps, crisp and mechanical in the gathering dark. Juno turned too fast, pain lancing up from her foot. She caught herself on the wall with one bloody hand and dragged them all up again with the other. The striped animal flattened itself beside the broken floorboards, lips peeled back, eyes flashing between her and the doorway. A man stood beyond the threshold in the violet remains of evening, rifle tucked hard into his shoulder. He was lean under a patched oilskin coat, with a beard gone ragged around a mouth that looked as if smiling had become an expensive habit. The rain had eased for a moment, but the wind still carried that metallic wet smell through the trees, along with the dark reek rising from the crawlspace under the house. His gaze flicked once to the blood, once to the hole in the floor, and sharpened. "You dropped one in?" he asked. Juno swallowed. One tried to come up. Then more heard it. He did not lower the rifle. "You alone?" The question was simple enough to feel dangerous. Juno glanced at the striped creature before she could stop herself. The man saw the movement and his expression changed, not softer, exactly, but more certain. "That thing's why the porch lights came on," he said. The words hit harder than the tone. "The what?" He jerked the barrel toward the dim blue glow still tracing the walls. "System shelter. Thought I was chasing weather glass at first. Then I saw the field at your steps. Haven't seen one wake in 15 years. Juno felt the cold settle somewhere deeper than skin. "Wake?" "Bond," he said. "Claim. However yours phrased it." His eyes stayed on her face, measuring. "If it took, it keyed to you. Which means that house is yours now, and everything in the dark will learn it before dawn." A pulse of pale text rose in the edge of her vision as if called by his certainty. Shelter Core recognized. Primary custodian, Juno Hale. Integrity, 61%. Power reserve, 18%. Occupants detected, 2. Threat response capacity limited. Occupants detected, 2. Juno stared at the words until they steadied. 2. Not 1. The striped animal saw something in her stillness and stopped hissing, though it trembled so hard its ribs fluttered. The man on the porch noticed her focus drift. "So it talks to you clear enough," he said. "Good. Then listen clear enough back. Shelters don't feed people. They don't heal much. They don't make ammo, and they sure as hell don't keep out everything. They buy time. That's all." He glanced into the house again, then to the dark line of trees. "Time matters." Wind pressed through the doorway. The little animal gave a low, broken chitter and limped a step toward Juno, then another, one rear leg dragging badly. Blood striped its fur where the dog thing had caught it. Up close it smelled of wet leaves, musk, and fear. A second prompt opened over the first. Unregistered companion form life signature within boundary. Status, distressed. Option available, temporary sanctuary mark. Effects, extends barrier recognition, enables basic treatment interface, reserves 4% power, increases food burden, cannot be revoked without companion death or shelter loss. Juno read it twice. Temporary, the system called it, while naming the exact ways it would become permanent. Outside, the man's jaw tightened as if he knew the shape of the choice without seeing the words. "Don't mark what you can't keep alive," he said quietly. "Boundary counts every mouth. Storm's coming. Noise below means the burrow's active. If power runs dry, the field drops." The striped creature had reached her boot. It looked up, teeth no longer bared, and pressed its narrow skull once against the side of her ankle as if testing whether she would kick it away. Juno thought of city maps, of load calculations, of all the old safe theories built for places where walls stayed walls and foundations did not answer back from the earth. She thought of the thing under the house, of the blood on the floor, of the rifle in the doorway and the fact that this stranger had not yet decided whether she was salvage or competition. Her foot throbbed in brutal rhythm. 4% power. More food. One more vulnerable thing to defend. One more thing inside. Slowly, without taking her eyes off the prompts hanging in the air, Juno lowered them all and reached for the creature's shaking body as thunder rolled somewhere beyond the trees. The creature weighed less than she expected and more than it looked. Bones sharp under damp fur, body trembling hard enough to rattle against her forearms, it made a thin sound once when she lifted it, then tucked its narrow face against her sleeve as if hiding there were an instinct older than fear. The man in the doorway tracked every movement with the rifle. Rain smell thickened on the wind behind him. "You're serious," he said, not mocking now, just baffled. Juno's foot screamed when she put weight on it. She half carried, half hobbled the animal to the cleared corner beside the workbench where the floorboards were driest. Blood had already darkened the wood from where it had dragged itself in. Up close, it wasn't any animal she knew. Fox-sized, maybe, but longer in the body, with a tail split at the tip like two frayed cords. Its ears were too large, almost translucent along the edges. One hind leg had been cut open to the muscle. A pale prompt unfolded at the edge of her vision. Injured void touched juvenile detected. Inside shelter perimeter. Eligible action, stabilize occupant. Requirements, 1 water, 1 cloth, 1 edible biomass. Bonus, first mercy event. Juno let out one short laugh that held no humor. Of course there's a bonus. Talking to the air again, the man said. Yes. Juno snatched the cracked plastic bottle from the counter, tore a strip from the cleanest part of her ruined shirt, and took one of the protein bars from her dwindling stack. Every movement was ugly with pain and urgency. She rinsed the wound first. Black-tinged blood washed over her fingers, colder than it should have been. The creature bared tiny glassy teeth but didn't bite. It watched her with fever-bright silver eyes, every muscle locked, trusting nothing but enduring anyway. When she pressed the cloth to the cut, its body jolted. Instantly, almost without thinking, Juno put her free hand over its ribs and spoke the way she once had to panicked residents during evacuation drills, low and level and certain even when certainty was a lie. Stay still. I know. I know. You don't have to like it. Just stay. The trembling eased by degrees beneath her palm. Consume listed materials to stabilize occupant? Yes, she said. The protein bar vanished from her hand in a wash of dim blue particles. The strip of cloth tightened on its own, winding neatly around the leg. The last swallow of water hissed into steam over the wound. The creature arched, let out a soft cry, and then sagged. Shelter system event complete. Occupant stabilized. Shelter XP plus 20. Empathy protocol recognized. Hidden branch unlocked, habitation. New structure available, nest module. New function available, occupant bonding. Warning, habitation increases shelter signature. The room changed before she could ask what that meant. A seam of light ran through the dirt-packed wall near the corner, tracing a rectangle no wider than a dog crate. Earth shifted with a grinding, root-heavy murmur. Boards from the collapsed pantry skittered across the floor, pulled by some invisible magnetic will, and fitted themselves into a low alcove lined with shredded dry moss and warm amber fibers that hadn't existed a second earlier. The creature lifted its head. For the first time, its eyes focused without panic. It sniffed the new alcove, then looked back at Juno. Go on, she whispered. It limped once, twice, then dragged itself into the nest and circled clumsily before collapsing into the moss. One split tip of its tail curled over its nose. The silver in its eyes dimmed to a sleepy pearl. A chime pulsed through the floor. Core shelter upgraded to level 2. Power efficiency plus 5%. Structural integrity plus 12%. Perimeter radius expanded by 3 meters. The roof stopped dripping over the table. Hairline cracks in the walls sealed with threads of resin. The front threshold thickened into a real sill. Outside, in the gray wash before the storm, a faint band of blue light spread through the weeds and broken stones around the house, marking a clean circle of claimed ground. Visible progress. Real walls. A place that was marginally less likely to kill her. Then every prompt on the air turned red. Shelter signature increased. Unknown entities have noticed habitation. First nocturnal convergence accelerated. The man with the rifle spun toward the yard. What did you do? Juno heard it an instant later, not thunder this time, but movement answering from the tree line all at once, dozens of bodies slipping through wet brush in a tightening ring around the new blue perimeter as something vast and deliberate exhaled just beyond the reach of the light, and the nest behind her gave a warning whine as she reached for the maul and lunged for the door to slam it shut before whatever had heard the shelter's first heartbeat came inside with the rain. The door struck the frame hard enough to shatter the whole wall, and Juno dropped the bar into place just as claws, or hands, raked across the outer planks with a splintering hiss. The house answered like something waking. Resin surged through the seams, thickening the wood, knitting old wormholes shut. Blue light flared under the threshold, and whatever pressed there gave a sharp, almost offended cry. Not beasts, Juno realized. Too many different rhythms. Some padded. Some scraped. One thudded with a slow, ponderous weight that made dust sift from the rafters. Another chime rippled from below their feet, lower this time, almost subterranean. Sanctuary function detected. Sublevel access unsealed. A line she had taken for a flaw split across the floor beside the table. The boards folded inward in a neat square, releasing a breath of air so warm and dry it smelled impossibly of cedar, iron, and clean water. Pale glyphs spiraled down a narrow stair that had not been there a moment ago. The rifleman swore and backed toward it, muzzle wavering between the door and the opening. That wasn't here. No, Juno said, and the rifleman stepped fully inside at last, his boots clicking over the threshold as she tracked him with the maul. Rain had plastered his black hair to his forehead, but his face was bloodless for another reason entirely. He was staring at the symbols rising and fading along the stairwell walls. I've seen that script before, he said. Outside, something slammed broadside into the house, and the whole sanctuary groaned but held. Not in a ruin. In a map vault under Halcyon. This isn't just a shelter. It's a node. A long, wet inhalation sounded beyond the door, so deep it seemed to pull heat from the room. The creature in the nest woke with a shrill, desperate trill and buried itself deeper in the moss. Juno looked from the barred entrance to the stair, feeling the ring of bodies tightening beyond the blue line. If they stayed above, they would be defending one room against a convergence. If they went below, they might be stepping into whatever had built this place, and whatever had wanted it buried. The rifleman met her gaze and, for the first time, fear gave way to decision. He crossed to the opening, seized a rust-dark lever hidden beneath the lip of the floor, and hauled it down. From somewhere under the house, chains thundered into motion. The first thing that rose from the depths was not a gate, or a weapon, but a voice saying her name.